Hi, Joe Cerrone.
And Alan Rosen.
Welcome to CAD 134, Basic AutoCAD for Interior Design. This is our Zoom classroom meeting. So we have the content posted for Chapter 2, and the assignments are listed right here. Chapter 2, Exercise 1. Exercise 2. Exercise 3. Four and 5. And these are good assignments for just basic shape creation, being able to use the line command, being able to use the arc command, being able to download a title block, and to be able to work on these projects. And so you should have these drawings complete and put them into the assignments folder. The drawings are due next week. So they're due on the 9th. Exercise 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You'll use this plate title block to create those drawings. So with that, we'll take a look at Chapter 3. And in Chapter 3, Module 3, we have that set for you. And we have a number of different assignments for it. If we go to the Content tab, and we look at Chapter 3, our chapter objectives are to go through these modify commands like break, chamfer, copy, distance, divide, using a drawing template, explode, fillet. We'll work with grips, hatching, ID point, measure. So there's a number of these different commands, and you can type in any of these commands rather than to look for the icon. The exercise from the textbook looks like this. It's basically a conference room. Students will draw this conference room. It's going to look like this upon completion. And so it takes you through step by step in the D2L Chapter 3, how to do this project. And so if we take a look at the book chapter,
Joe, you still there?
yeah, it had to download.
Okay.
So Chapter 3 goes through these different commands, and then it has this exercise 3.1. And so for this week, you will do exercise 3-1, drawing this conference room. And so it walks you through how to do the conference room, put in all the furniture. They make it kind of very cookbook approach, where you kind of go through and you have to follow the directions. And that's fine. I think that's just kind of the way that this works. We'll use like the divide command to be able to lay out the locations of the chairs, be able to work with creating a floor plan for that. And so Chapter 3 goes through how to create that conference room. And so it's 3.1. And then the second exercise is to draw the curved conference room, exercise 3-3. So 2 exercises for this week. And if we look at the D2L under contents, here's the first exercise. And there's a project in here where they actually put in
It's a rug that's extra credit.
a rug of some sort. Yes. And so here's project 3.1. And here's the exercise that you're to do. And then if we come back here to lab, here's project 3.2. And those will be due in 2 weeks. So with that, we're going to take a look at the Chapter 3 PowerPoint. So Chapter 3, we're going to look at these different modify commands. We're going to look at using a template. And so when we download a title block, if we download it as a DWT file, it's the same as a DWG. It just allows us to save that file. When we work with polylines, what polylines are is they are multiple lines that are connected. And so polylines, the way they use them in this exercise is to draw the conference room. But if we look at the polyline command in AutoCAD, and we go to model space, and we draw polylines. Polylines are connected shapes. And so if I go through here and I draw something with a polyline, we use an O snap, and I hit enter, and then I hover over that shape, that becomes a boundary shape. So we often use polylines to create 3D objects. And so what we'll often do is switch over to an isometric view and then use that polyline, and we'll extrude it, or we'll press pull it. So we can extrude these into 3-dimensional shapes, and then we can do other modifications to them. So as we start to work with these exercises, like we're working, you want to use layers. And so you want to have your dimensions on dimension layers. And you can see I can turn that off. And then as we draw these different shapes, where we'll be able to go with it is we'll be able to start to model different things. And so I could press pull some of these into some shapes. Maybe not, but we'll come back to that. So if we come back here to our top view, we're going to draw this exercise up, use proper layering, put the dimensions on the dimension layer. If we come back to our PowerPoint, polylines, if we use the offset command, what the offset command will do is it'll create a line parallel to our last line. So when we look at the exercise, if we were to go and offset something like the walls, if we wanted to offset those 6 inches, we could go in here with the offset command, type in the distance, 6. Select the line to offset, and then you can select the side, and you can create as many offsets as you want while you're in that command. If I can select those, I can grab them with grips and I can delete those. Switching back to our PowerPoint. The explode command is used to break objects back into separate pieces. And so as we look at these projects and these different objects, when they're all together like this chair is, that's a polyline that's been joined or it's been created that way. And then if we explode that with the explode command, what that'll do is it'll break it back into the individual elements. So this is an arc, a line, another arc. And so explode is used to separate things that are joined or grouped. ID point allows us to get analysis information. And so as we work with these drawings, when we're working with ID point, what we can do is we can get a location, an XY location. And so under utilities, we have ID point. And if I want to know the exact location of that chair, I can go and I can select it. And it'll tell me the exact X and Y location. X is 13 feet 3 inches. Y is 24 feet 5 inches. They're really more useful when we work with mechanical drawings, if we're making something on a machining press. When we use these other utility commands, we'll more often use things like measure, where we might say, hey, how far is it from the lectern, and I'll turn on my O-snap, to the chair? Oh, it's 5 feet. How far is it to the wall? 6 feet, 7.5 inches. And so you can use these analysis tools as we start to get better with AutoCAD. The trim command is used to shorten these lines, and so we can use trim. Rectangle will create a rectangle. When we use trim or rectangle, what we're doing is we're taking a line that intersects another line, and then we'll use trim. And the way that the command is set up is you select a cutting line. And so if I say trim, and this will be my cutting line. Actually, it used to be like that, not anymore in 2021. So you say trim, and then it will allow you to trim a line to another boundary element. And so you no longer have to hit Enter L to make it select all as cutting edges. You just say trim, and then what you want to get rid of. And trim works on arcs as well. And so if I have an arc and I want to trim that arc up to this line or trim it between those lines, I can say trim, and then I can trim it between those shapes. Rectangle command, chamfer command, fillet command. Chamfer and fillet are very much the same. And so as we start to work with them, if we were to use a chamfer, it would be under the modify command. And chamfer and fillet are kind of like grouped under the same. And so if I go with chamfer and then I hit the down arrow and I can say distance, I can select, let's say 2 feet by 2 feet. And then if I want to chop off the corner of this room, I can do that. Or I could fillet it. And so let me undo that. To use the fillet command, I could go to fillet. Again, you need to set the radius or the chamfer distance. And so I'm going to say 2 feet on the radius for that one. And then you'll notice that we get a pick box. So we can select these 2 lines. And it will go through and create a fillet between the 2 geometries. We can use copy using an O-snap, rotate, point. And so as we look at these different modify commands, copy would work like this, where we say copy, we can select the object. So the first thing it's going to want to do is say, select what we want to copy, and it will count how many objects we have found. When we're done selecting, we hit enter, and then we can copy it from a base point to a destination point. And we can keep copying those as long as we're in the copy command. If we come back here and we look at the point command, when we create points, we have to first set up the point style. And so we can go and say, I want a point style like this. And I'll say, okay, let's go with absolute units. And then when I put a point in the drawing, it will be that point style. Oftentimes I'll use points to be able to go through and use for construction techniques. So I'll lay out where the points are located. And then the rotate command, if we look at how the rotate command will work, I can rotate this chair by selecting the rotate command, selecting the chair to rotate, hit enter, select where I want to rotate it from, and then I can rotate it either with the mouse, or I can type in 90 degrees and rotate it with a numeric value. The divide command puts points along a line. And so if we want to divide something into 4 equal parts, then what we want to do is to set this divide command. And so we can come back here to our CAD system. And then if I have a line and I want to divide that, I can say divide. And then I can select that line and I can say divide that into 3 segments. And then it will put a point at each of those segments. Whereas the measure command will go through and it'll measure a specific distance. And so, for example, if I go to measure, I could say, I want to measure this line and I want that to be create drawing entities every so often. So if I want to measure, I can select that line. And then it's going to ask me how long each segment will be. And I could say 2 feet. And then it will measure every 2 feet and put a point. We use object snaps quite a bit. And so we'll use our object snap settings within our drawings. And so you want to be able to toggle these O snaps on and off. And then from a standpoint of which ones we usually run with, endpoint, midpoint, and center, I usually have on all the time. I'll also use intersection, and sometimes I'll use quadrant. But when O snaps are on, when we're in a drawing command, it will gravitate or attach itself to an endpoint or to a midpoint, provided that that O snap is active. Mirror command will create a mirror of the object. And then they have some other things like going through and setting up some of the drafting settings. Breaking objects, editing polylines. The hatch command is a good command. If we come back here to our drawing and we wanted to go through and add a pattern to it, a hatch pattern, what we would do is we go here to the hatch command. We select our pattern. And so the patterns are scaled. And so depending on which one you pick, you will have a scale pattern. Let's go ahead and take like a brick pattern. We can hover in here, click, and then we can adjust that hatch pattern by going through and adjusting the scale up or down. So the lower the number, the finer the pattern, and then we can green check mark that. The array command will create circular or rectangular arrays of the objects. And so we can go through and we can create like multiple desk patterns by using the array command. So I could come over here and I could say array. And if I go with a rectangular array, I can select the object and I can build a rectangular array. And you can then increase this number of columns. If I want to say 6, number of rows, I could say 5, 6 by 6. If I want to use a polar array, what I would be doing would be creating a circular geometry. And so a polar array will create an array pattern around a center point. And again, you can change the number of items within that array. Distance will allow us to take measurements. Polygons will create polygon shapes. And then grips are a way of selecting an object and then doing something to it. So when grips are active, you can go through and you can select on some lines, and then you can change the shape of it by manipulating the grip. You can also use grips a lot for changing the locations of dimensions. Polar tracking we use a lot as we go with grid and snap. You want to enable polar tracking because when you have polar tracking on, if we go to tools, drafting settings, and we look at what polar tracking is, with it enabled, and I have it at 15 degrees, because I used to use a drafting board and I know how to use a pencil, and a drafting machine used to snap the ruler every 15 degrees. And so when you draw a line with polar on, you'll get this tracking line. And then if I track that up 15 degrees, you can see I get another tracking line. I'll get one at 30. And with polar set to being on, you can use something called direct distance, which allows you to track it. And then if I say 15 feet, it'll draw a line at that angle 15 feet long. And so the polar tracking is really great. You can go through and measure that. It'll tell me it's 15 feet. And so we recommend using polar tracking. We're not really doing the syncing yet. We haven't really got into that. We'll have to go into seeing how that does. It looks like it backs up your programs. Okay, so that's the review of the chapter 3 information. I'm about 20 minutes into the video, Al. So while we're cutting this video, is there anything that I should talk about in chapter 3 that you can think of?
No, make sure to use our template that we have already pre-made for them, please.
So you're going to want to use a CAD template. Is it in here or do I need to go and get it?
No, it's into where it says architectural.
So if we go to our templates, ARC templates.
Yes.
And then if we download, here's a DWT, meaning it's a template file. The B-size ARC, download it. And then it starts us off in model space, but if we want to look at it in paper space, that's it right there.
Yep. And also there is other architectural and mechanical templates there if you need to.
Right. So we have a mechanical and an architectural, but for this one, you're going to want to use the ARC template for that.
That is correct.
So that was our B size, and that's going to be under content.
Correct.
And then from a standpoint of the assignments, just 2 drawings for them to make. Under module 3, the assignment for this week will be to complete these 2 exercises, project 3.1 and 3.2.
Also, that if you look on top, please, you'll see your floor plan. You'll also see a drawing of part of it. A little lower, please. No. A little lower, right there. You'll see also a rug. That's extra credit if you have time or want to try to do it. The rug is supposed to be a rectangle or square, but we would like you to use your imagination. If you were at a customer or a customer is asking you to design a rug for them, this is what you would have to do.
And it's just a good way to work with CAD also by using some of these line commands and draw commands to be able to start to personalize the drawings. Okay, so that's our Zoom video meeting. I'm going to end the recording before the video gets too long, and then we're going to open things up for questions. So again, this week's assignment, turn in the chapter 2 exercises due on the 9th. Start the chapter 3 exercises. Chapter 3 exercises are to do these conference rooms. Here's your links to the chapter 3 exercises from the textbook, and then they're located under content. So that's our quick review for this week. We'll see you online next week. I'm going to end the recording. Thank you.